Hi everyone. I hope that you guys are doing good despite the frustrating times we're going through, the Red Monday that we're seeing, and the uncertainty growing all over the place. It's not an easy time to be in the market for sure. When you come in at the bottom, it's easier because you know that you're already very low, and this is why many times we say in the community, it's easier to buy in than to sell out. I'm not saying that we're selling out right now, but when we are at a certain point in the market and things haven't come around as we expected, there's always more uncertainty than buying very early or at a low price. So we've had our monthly close, we had our weekly close. I'm going to cover what I think is going on in the market and what the chart is showing, along with what whales are doing as well, because there is a very big discrepancy between what retail is doing and what whales are doing. So the monthly pure doji, the wick at the top is a little bit bigger than the wick at the bottom, depending on which broker you look at, but essentially it's a doji, which means uncertainty, accumulation. On the weekly, we had a bit of a bearish candle. If I just take everything out. So what I did like about the weekly is that we had two close at 108, and then yesterday we closed at 110. So price is stepping up with the body of the candles. Today we are lower, but it is Monday. We might get a pretty red Monday, and I actually hope we do get one because historically every single time we've had one, okay, maybe not every single time, but I would say a good 90 to 95% of the time we had a massive red Monday. This was the bottom. So if today we get liquidation of like everything that's left and we get a big wick on Monday, then I'm pretty sure to 80 to 90% sure that the bottom is in and that we're going to turn, because historically, if you look at the previous times, it very often happened on a Monday. Here, Monday, we had the lowest point. Monday here, same thing. Tuesday, we reversed. And there are other times as well where almost every time it happens on a Monday. Like these big wicks very often happen on a Monday. And if you look here, same thing. Monday, massive liquidation, big wick, and we turned. So I actually do hope that we get a massive liquidation today, a big wick, so that it gives a further confirmation that the bottom is in and we are turning. So the weekly is, like I was saying, more like a doji, monthly doji, weekly doji. The important part is that we did not close below. So if you guys remember, I said that as long as we stay in that wick here with the body of the candle, and of course we might get a wick that comes all the way here to 100k and then we turn, but as long as the body of the candle stays above this wick, above this level, we're good. And this level will be valid for quite some time until broken, of course. Like I was explaining on Friday, this is really the level that we need to hold. If we break this level with the body of the candle, then I will go ahead and hedge my portfolio. But there are a few things that are keeping me very bullish at the moment, a few details that we see in certain coins, in whale behavior, that is just showing us that it is more likely that we continue and end the bullish phase than going into a bearish phase right now. On the daily, we're more or less the same, very neutral. I'm pretty sure that if today we get a bearish candle, a lot of people will say, oh, we have a head and shoulders pattern, so we're going a lot lower. The only thing is that head and shoulders usually happen at the top of a market, not in a consolidation zone at support, so it's not really valid. As long as we hold that support, we should be fine. On the 4 hour, we had that ascending channel that I was explaining on Friday that led to short-term bearishness. And right now we had sort of a double top right there with the bearish engulfing. Yesterday we had around the closing of the weekly, low liquidity sweep basically because almost no one was trading, and exchanges just used that opportunity to liquidate quite a bit of traders. I think it was around 450 million. I have a post somewhere. Sorry about that. Yes, 426 million worth of crypto long liquidated in the past 24 hours. And usually these happen when there's low liquidity because it's the easiest for exchanges to just dump the price and liquidate everyone. So I'm not too worried about the move that we saw earlier today. The daily is still on support. As long as we stay on support, we are safe. Monthly, weekly, just consolidation. Ideally, what we see after this candle is a very bullish candle because I don't know if you guys heard about supply and demand. Well, price essentially is determined by supply and demand, and you can spot these high supply and demand zones on the chart by looking at the dojis. Back in 2024, here's a really great example where you have a bullish move, a doji, and then another bullish move. This is a demand zone where there was a big consolidation and demand was way stronger, and a lot of people use these levels to then put their buy orders, and these usually get filled. You can see that once we fill that demand zone here, we reversed. So having a bearish doji and then followed by a massive bullish candle just shows that it's a demand zone where basically retail handed over their Bitcoin. From here, like I was saying before, I actually do hope we get some more liquidations around the 100,000, especially today, because if that happens on Monday, then we're good. And you can see that if we take the fib level, this one was already fulfilled. And here we are basically on the 78.6%. We could retap that 78.6% again. And on the monthly, if we take from the swing low to the swing high, so far it's been respected really well. Every single time, 38.2, 50%, and this time 38.2. So we could get down to that 50% like we came down here at the 50%, and no, at this case here, and then continue to go for that extension right there. So there is quite a lot of support at 100K. And as I was saying, as long as on the weekly we close above 102, we are good. Only if we close below will I start to enact on my portfolio and short the market basically. The thing is that by shorting the market, you do both. You're in the market so that if it goes up, you're covered with the gains. And if it goes down, then you're covered with your shorts. So you're covering both sides to make sure that you don't miss something and just hold your portfolio all the way down and don't benefit from any of the moves. What we have also is, so we have that upper trend line, which is very steep. And we have that lower trend line right there where we actually broke out a little bit today on H4, but its price is finding support. What happens a lot with trend lines is that the second touch usually gets retested when there is a breakout, and then price finds support around this level, fakes out that trend line, and then reverses. So there is the possibility that we go a bit lower. Hang in there. We're not out of the woods yet, especially at the beginning of the month. If the rest of the month is going to be very bullish, it's pretty likely that the beginning of the month is going to be a bit bearish, because usually the first moves are the opposite. And nothing has changed so far on the daily. What we need to become bullish, or to get out of the consolidation and turn bullish again, is really break above this level here so that the daily time frame structure turns back to being bullish. As long as we don't break this level to the upside, we're not fully bullish yet. So below this level here, below 100K, around this level, we are very bearish. Above this level, we're very bullish. And you can see that on top of the fib retracement, we also have that weekly support here that was a resistance, broke, retest, and then we made a new all-time high. So these are the two levels that I'm keeping an eye on. If I see something that is very worrying, I will of course say it. But so far, we still don't have the top signal or anything. We're still in the very early phase of the bull run in terms of what we've been before, where we've topped before. I think it's very unlikely that we see a top when we haven't even passed the 50%, that white line right there. For Ethereum, same thing. We're seeing dojis basically for the past 2 months. We had a breakout and then 2 dojis. Usually when these things happen, we see bullishness that comes in because we have that candle. So far, we've stayed within this one candle for 2 months. And if we don't break this level right there, we are going to stay bullish. And you can see also the difference right there. Here we have a massive bearish engulfing, massive bearish candle, and this was the top of the market for Ethereum. But now we have one bullish candle and then the next 2 candles, big wicks, which a doji, as you know, is accumulation, indecision. And probably this 3rd candle here will either be also a very small doji or a full reversal. And you can see that the characteristic of the top here is very different from this one. Here we barely had any wicks. Here we have quite a lot of wicks. Seeing that accumulation at the top is either a distribution, which I will show you in a little bit, or an accumulation hand over to whales basically that are scooping up everything. The weekly says exactly the same thing. All the wicks are at the bottom. And if you remember back here, I was telling you guys that when all the wicks are mainly at the bottom, it means that this is an accumulation phase, not a top. And once we see a reversal on the weekly, then it's a full reversal. We haven't had that weekly bullish engulfing yet. As soon as we have a candle that's like this, that closes above the body of the previous candle, I think that will be the reversal. Basically, where we are right there is likely something that's like this. This is why I'm saying it's still possible that we come a little bit lower, just like we did here, and then see a reversal. And on Ethereum, you can see that this screams accumulation. And the thing is, we're on top of the trend line. So we are on support, massive accumulation happening at these levels. On the monthly, we could still come down to the 50%, around 3,100, but this, I'm talking really worst case. Even if we come down to that level, we're still okay. But I'm really talking worst case. I'm not saying this is going to happen. It is possible because we can't just look at one side when looking at the charts, but I think that we are pretty safe looking at all of these candles, considering that we're on support. And Ethereum Bitcoin is also showing the exact same thing. We've been staying above that trend line for quite some time. And usually if we hold above for that long, it's more likely that we reverse than we break down. So this is why I am still bullish so far. Nothing is screaming full-on bearishness, top of the market at the moment. We're just finding support basically many times. And this is why I'm saying we could come down one last time. Probably a lot of people put their stop losses below those massive wicks that we had during that Friday when all those liquidations happened. And then once we take out all those longs, we turn. The S&P, I was afraid that we would close as a shooting star, but we close as a doji, which is not very good, but it's also not very bad, because you can see that when we had a doji here at the top, we had one more bearish candle and then we continued. So it's likely that this week might not be very good. Here we have another example. Doji, bearish candle, and then we continued. So having a doji at this place is way better than having the shooting star that was actually forming before we reversed on Friday, because it was looking pretty bearish. And also the thing that I see in some alts is that we're seeing some kind of random pumps here and there. ICP went up, how much was it? 50% basically in 2 days, and now it's retraced 11%. And seeing some random coins pop like that is usually a sign that the big pump is coming soon. We've seen this happen a lot of times where we see random coins just pump 30, 40, 50%, retrace a little bit, and then the whole market starts moving a couple weeks later. So this is why I'm saying that these little things, also like H-bar that pumped quite a bit in a couple days, we saw because of the ETF, we pumped 36%, now we've retraced. But seeing little pumps like this is very positive, and that adds to the confluence that we are actually looking pretty good. And stock RSI that I use just as another confluence is pretty low. We're actually going towards the bear market level accumulation zone, basically, where you would say now we have to accumulate instead of selling, then rather than going all the way up, and where you would think, okay, maybe we need to consider selling or anything like this. So it's actually showing the opposite of we're at the top. But I know that the current market conditions are very hard. When we see coins like H-bar coming down from 40 cents to 18 cents, ICP from $15 to $3, or Chainlink from $27 to $16, $15, and we bought at levels that are higher, it's of course very frustrating. But as an investor, we just have to understand and know that we can't catch the bottom all the time. Sometimes you'll get lucky. Sometimes I got lucky and caught the bottom, like I did for Bitcoin at 16K. But on other coins, I've bought way higher, and we just can't perfectly time the market. As long as we make a 6 to 10x, it's better than making just a 1 to 2x. If we make a 7x, we didn't make a 10x because we didn't buy all the way low, but we're still making a 6 or 7x. So I think that what I always tell myself is that on average, I want to buy low and sell high. I'm not going to get always the top or always the bottom, but I'm okay with this as long as I make quite a bit of profits, which is the goal. And just the fact that we're in so much fear, that the market is in so much fear at the moment, is a sign on its own that we're most likely not at the top. And the Bitcoin chart is not looking very bullish at the top right there, but it's also not looking bearish. We'll just have to wait for the market to tell us, are we going down or are we going up? My expectation is still that it's way more likely that we're going up from here than down. But I'm of course not going to be fully closed and blinded by my expectation or by my desires to ignore the downside. I'm still very bullish, but I'm keeping an eye on the market that if it shows me a sign, I'm out of the market, basically. Not out, but hedging. It's very likely that we get a bit more of a sell-off, especially when we see the S&P opening. If we have a gap to the downside, then Bitcoin is going to follow and potentially get those last liquidations that we have around 100, 203, I think. If we take Bitcoin, 105, 104 are the biggest ones. After 103, basically, there is not much more to liquidate anymore. We would already be at 5.7 billion. But you can see the market is mostly short. There is still a lot of longs around 105. And it's very likely that we get to liquidate these levels, especially if the S&P opens pretty bearish. So just be ready for it. It's all part of the manipulation that they're working on, taking out the longs, taking out the shorts. That's a whole game that has been played in Forex, in stock markets. It happens a lot. So just be ready for it if it happens. Of course, if we find support here and see a massive bullish engulfing, then the odds change. But currently, I would say we need to wait for these candles to close. But if we close as a doji, it's likely that that short-term support doesn't hold fully. ETFs have been selling off as well. We saw roughly $1 billion in sales. I'm not too worried about this short-term selling. If this would have been going on for weeks, then it's something else. But ETFs are also held by retail. Anybody can buy an ETF share. So this is most likely retail also selling their Bitcoin. We can see that institutions have not sold a thing. They're holding, and what's happening currently is the result basically of what Powell said, that the December rate cut is not so sure, liquidity is dry, and the market is now repricing all of those events in and just adjusting the price. But we're seeing quite a bit of bullish posts and bullish things happening. So the liquidations, I already said it. Cardone Capital makes a new 22 million Bitcoin purchase following its 52 million purchase in October. So big companies are buying, and not a few 100,000, not 1 or 2 Bitcoin, but in millions. Jordi Visser compares Bitcoin sideways price action this year to a silent IPO. So we knew that things were going to be different with institutions being on board and everything. And I do think that is just whales taking over what's being sold from retail, basically. The Treasury Secretary Bessent says 17 years after the white paper, the Bitcoin network is still operational and more resilient than ever. Bitcoin never shuts down. If he says that, either it's a top signal and everybody's being fooled, or he actually means it and there are big things coming for Bitcoin. Coinbase keeps stacking Bitcoin through weekly DCA purchases. The company added 2,772 Bitcoin, growing its holding from 11,000 to 14,548. If they are accumulating, I really doubt that right now we are at the top. So, I mean, of course, there are two possibilities. Either all the whales are completely fooling retail, and when everything crashes, everybody's going to lose money, companies are going down and all this. Or it's actually retail handing over their Bitcoin to the big players, which in my opinion is exactly what's happening right now. Because if you go on social media, almost everyone is very bearish. And I've just learned historically that when everybody's bearish, it's a time to be very bullish and actually buying. You have more chances making money buying when everybody's bearish than buying when everybody's bullish. Bitcoin dips to 107K. This dip has sparked a wave of sub 100K price predictions. The last time bearish forecasts surged like this in October 17th of last year, Bitcoin rebounded 12% within 10 days. And that's exactly what I'm saying. When everybody's bearish, calling for 90, 80, 70, 50K, it's time to be bullish, because the odds are more on the side of the bullishness than the bearishness. Year to date, the institutional demand for Bitcoin has been 7 times larger than the amount of Bitcoin mined, which is what I was saying. A supply shock is coming, and when this happens, the move will be very quick, and it won't leave a lot of time to retail to be in early, because the move will already have happened and they will buy in a lot later. And also, if we look at the on-chain data, you can see that Bitcoin supply keeps on drying up. There is no stopping there. Bitcoin accumulation addresses demand growth keeps on increasing. We're seeing that same inflow into accumulation addresses. It's not stopping. Yes, ETFs are ranging a bit because retail is adjusting, but we're not seeing any big sell-off. Quite the contrary, we're seeing Ethereum accumulation, Bitcoin accumulation, and the balances just keep on rising. There is no slowing down at the moment. So, and also whale holdings, which are the big addresses, we're not seeing a massive sell-off. Some early whales have taken some profits, yes, but we're not seeing any sell-off from the big players. So if big players are buying, they're accumulating, they're not selling, then why should we be selling or be bearish at the moment? Because the thing is, everything is on chain, everybody can see it, but the current market sentiment is very bearish. And I think it's mainly due to emotions. When we buy in, we expect something to happen at a certain time. When it doesn't happen, we're fully disappointed and start questioning our reasoning, our decisions and everything. But what's happening currently is just accumulation. If we compare this type of behavior to the S&P, you can see that we're basically mirroring it. These moves are completely normal to see higher highs and higher lows. Of course, crypto is used to massive moves like this, but things have changed. It's not the same since we have those big institutions on board and everything. We're more mirroring a kind of big stock market type of behavior than crypto. It doesn't mean that we're not going to see a massive run up. It's just that we're seeing big accumulation. And if you look at the S&P, we've had also back in 2020 from the low 120%. So it's not to say that we're not going to see the same returns, because small early stocks see 1 to 5,000% move. So there's no reason that our altcoins wouldn't see it. Of course, Bitcoin is not going to see the same thing, but I do believe that we're just seeing a slow accumulation. Retail came in hoping something that's not happening in the same time frame they wanted, but I still think it's coming. So far, there is nothing that's making me overly bearish at the moment. Of course, there's always a bit of uncertainty. We never know for sure. But as long as these key levels remain the same, unbroken, then I'm bullish. So I hope you guys hang in there. If you have any questions, please let me know. I hope I gave some reassurance with these key levels. At least we know exactly what to look for and what validates and invalidates the move. So I hope you guys have a great week. And keep in mind, if we have today a massive liquidation, it's perfect. It's very bullish. Have a great week and talk to you soon, everyone. Cheers.